Alrighty, well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you everybody who is participating and joining us for the second day of the Big Blue Button World 2022 Global Conference. So I'm here with Fred Dixon. Fred is the CEO of Blindside Networks and the co-founder of Big Blue Button, the world's most adopted open source virtual classroom, which was started in about 2007. So it's been a while, and Big Blue Button has had its eyes set on the world of online learning well before it took off as a response to COVID. It's been pretty much their bread and butter for the whole time. And so Fred, real pleasure to have you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Brendan. And thanks everybody who's coming. I think it's going to be a fun half hour. So just for the purposes of the recording, and as Brendan said, hi, I'm Fred, co-founder of Big Blue Button in 2007, which I've been managing the project. And really my management now is much more distance than it was in the early days. There's just a really big team of people now working around the world on Big Blue Button. But it actually frees me up to think more about what should we be going to and the direction we should be headed in. And I'll share a bit about that in this talk. And I'm also the CEO of Blindside Networks. I Moonlight. And just again, Big Blue Button, open source virtual classroom, you all know it. And Blindside Networks, we started the Big Blue Button project in 2007. So you would have heard it. It came out of Carleton University. Blindside Networks formed, started working away at it. And in the last 2 years, just us, we've hosted over 2 billion minutes of virtual classes for over 1 million educators. And if you include the number of minutes around the world of places that have hosted Big Blue Button, that would be in the billions for sure. Okay, I want to give you, I want to talk about roadmap, and I want to do it in the context of maybe where we are and where we're headed. So right now, 2.5 is released. It's what we're using for this conference. 2.6 is in alpha, and I'm going to hit a few notes on 2.6, and then I'm going to go into roadmap. And in the roadmap, I'm going to show you some wireframes, which I think will be interesting topics for discussion, and you'll see where some of our thoughts are headed. So in 2.6, the alpha 1 is out. If you've joined the community calls, you've seen these key things: capture the content when the breakout rooms end, make it easier to move people from breakout room to another. This is the main piece here for sure. A whole new whiteboard based on TL Draw, and also trying to get the whiteboard and annotations so that you can pull them out. So if you do lots of, say, math during the session, students, you can enable students to download it, and they download the PDF with all the annotations in it. So a couple of visuals. If you want to capture the presentations when breakout room ends, bring it back to the main room. Going to make it really easy to do that. Just have one checkbox, and you as the presenter, when you come back, you'll actually have the presentation here. Each one of the breakout rooms. Making it easier for a user to move users from breakout room to another. Again, it's kind of a quality of life thing. You can just drag and drop, and then click apply, and Big Blue Button will kind of help shepherd the people back and forth in the breakout rooms. And of course, TL Draw. Steve Roots, who is the creator of TL Draw, will be third speaker today. Definitely encourage you to check it out. We met with Steve months ago, early this year, really connected and thought, okay, let's go for it. Let's build this on top. Let's build this into Big Blue Button. And it's a lot of work. So we're pulling out the existing whiteboard, putting this in, and it triggers a whole cascade effect for the record and playback to make sure we capture all the TL Draw. But we are now pulled towards this vision of what will be with TL Draw embedded in Big Blue Button. And it's just going to be so nice. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this next release go out. Some screenshots and export annotations. You've seen these before, downloaded. It will process. This is if you're downloading the slides, giving the students the ability to download the slides with annotations, and it will appear in the chat. Super easy. Okay, a couple other items which are listed on the website, but I wanted to just highlight them because there's a lot of stuff going into 2.6. And there's parallel streams of development in Big Blue Button now. Teams of people are contributing components. They get merged in as part of the development cycle. So we're going to have recordings as a video. VP9 will probably be by default, and you can enable MPEG-4. But this will mean that 2.6 will give you a recording as a video. We are going to also deprecate the API examples. We're just going to switch to using Greenlight for the basic built-in. And then a couple other things which I have visuals for you. So in terms of pushing the layout down to users, which is really where do you want the webcams, it's going to move away from where it is right now in the settings to kind of a full feature dialog. So you choose how you want the layout, you decide whether you want to keep pushing this to everybody, and then you confirm. So the moderator would see this. Students cannot change the layout from others, but the moderator would be able to push the layout down. The audio dialogue is getting a bit of a revamp. You're going to see energy right here. So you could actually skip the echo text if you want and just go right to this. And again, just a little bit more unified, a little bit more easier to get in. And again, if you just want to skip echo test, go right to here. Or sorry, skip the choice, you can go right to here and join. Something really interesting is on the accessibility. So closed captioning is something that you would normally pay external companies for, or use the Google Webs, use the like Microsoft or Amazon or text-to-speech, but the browsers are building this in. So there's a pretty cool demonstration. If you Google Google Web Speech API and you just choose your language and click the microphone and you start talking, and you'll see the captions appear. This is built in. This is a W3 standard, and the browsers are starting to support it. They use external product. They use their own kind of server infrastructure to do it. So if you do this on Chrome, for example, your audio goes to Google servers. They give you speech-to-text API that comes back, but you don't pay for anything. It's actually built into the browser. So what we wanted to do was leverage this, and this is a screenshot of the captions that you will see in 2.6. So if I'm enable closed captioning, so I choose my language when I join, the user would see a closed caption, and when I speak, or whoever enables the captions, those will come through as captions. Whoever enables the speech to text, it'll come through as captions. So the cool thing about this is it's all client-side. I mean, you're using external servers as it's in the docs, but the BigBlueButton server doesn't have to do speech to text. It's actually going to be done by the browser. So that means it's a lot easier to implement this type of closed captionings. We're still going to work on others in the future, like server-side, maybe post-processing the recordings. But it's kind of cool that we can just use these web speech APIs that are becoming available in more browsers. And kind of a fun thing, dark mode. So we'll do dark mode for BigBlueButton. All right, I want to talk about the future. And I touched on it yesterday for those that saw the presentation. And you saw me go through like the 4 components of a successful virtual classroom. And I might have mentioned that all the features we do in BigBlueButton kind of stem from one of these 4 use cases, at least for the teacher. Set up and manage my class for success, establish presence and trust with and between students, effectively engage and activate their minds for learning, which is really important. You just can't watch. You have to be engaged. You have to do things. You have to struggle, make mistakes. And ideally, the teacher is able to assess your progress and give timely feedback. From the point of view of the student, that's a really effective virtual class. So let's look at how we're going to do some of these. I want to go through some wireframes for you for some work that we're doing, or work that we plan to do for smart slides, getting more insights from the LMS, this concept of a continuous learning environment, breakout vision and whiteboard vision, lots of wireframes in those, and cone of silence, which is kind of our way of letting you help a student out by going into a one-on-one session with them for a few moments. Okay, so yesterday I talked about the idea that a lot of times teachers would have to remix their content to create, a lot of times teachers have to use third-party tools and modify their content using these third-party tools to try to create more interactivity with them. And we think you shouldn't need to have to go to external tools. If you have all the content and you have questions there, maybe quizzing, maybe polling, maybe you have an assignment that you want students to do, you shouldn't have to take your slides and put them into something else. Ideally, you could just lightly annotate your slides and give enough hints that when loaded in BigBlueButton, it'll detect, hey, I see you have a poll. I see you have an external video to share. I see you have, looks like a whiteboard action where you want students to work on something together, and the correct answer is like 45 degrees. If you just lightly annotate your slides, you should be able to reuse your slides without having to go to a different platform. So that's the goal that we're trying to get to. So this wireframe, the first one, is an example of, imagine you load your slides into BigBlueButton, and BigBlueButton tells you, hey, I found a poll, I found a diagram, which maybe you want to use as a whiteboard. I found a question here, which could be like a quiz question with the correct answer. I see that you've got some indication that you want to do a breakout room, and maybe you've got students' names there of the names you want to put in the breakout room. And maybe you have another exercise here that you want to have students work on. The idea would be is that as you annotate your slides, you upload them to BigBlueButton and you see all of the activities are laid out for you. And of course, as you go through them, BigBlueButton gives you a one click to start them. So the slides kind of run the agenda for you and become the frame for the class, the framework. So actually, I think I mixed the slide up here. This one here is getting insights from the LMS. So let me jump to this for a moment. You have data in the LMS about students. This LMS knows about how long they've given assignments, participated, and there's some really, you can use machine learning to look at what's going on in the LMS, but if the student hasn't put in the last 2 assignments, probably not going to do very well in the class. That's going to correlate very highly with the student is at risk. You could manually look at the LMS before each virtual class and ask it to find out whose students are at risk. Seems like a lot of work. Why don't you just have the LMS send some additional information into BigBlueButton for what things that it believes are students at risk? And maybe there's some configuration in the LMS to, alert me when or notify me when. So this example here is the LMS has sent some additional information when Fred joined that said that there's 2 assignments missing. So this is like a warning, and there's a link back to the LMS. So that link, of course, you'd have to require to log back in to see it. You'd have to have the permissions as a teacher. But here, it's just like, I've got 30 students in my class, and before I get started, 2 of them looks like they're might be struggling, and right away, I've got information to know that maybe I need to pull those students into the discussion a bit more. Like there's no back of the classroom. You can see the BigBlueButton will help you with the help of the LMS, see which students may be at risk. The continuous learning environment. This is another example where we would like to get to a place where when you do a BigBlueButton session and finish it, of course the recordings are made, but maybe there's some extra information we could put in those recordings. And maybe when you start the next session, the LMS knows that there's a previous recording and passes on that a bit extra information that gives you just enough to like, hey, let's recreate, or let's pull the shared notes that I had from the previous session. Let's pull the chat, maybe pull the presentation, maybe pull the presentation with a whiteboard. I mean, there's lots of degrees of this. But the concept would be is, could we make it seem to the teacher that this environment persists, that things that they do in one are available in the things that they do in the other? And this would, again, thinking from the point of view of learning, we would want to make it really easy to build on what you already know before or already shared before. Okay, so let's talk about breakout vision. So this is the key one of the key items that we want to make possible for you. So right now, if you do breakout rooms, you can join with audio, or you can join with full join. But what you really want to do is monitor the breakout rooms. So we have gotten feedback from teachers that will literally open 4 tabs up, join all audio, and then listen to 4 different breakout rooms simultaneously. Kind of hurts your brain a bit, but they really do. We were amazed that they do this because they really want to know what's going on in the breakout rooms. So why don't we just make that visible to them in the main room? So here the insight is you can just move this panel to the side, make it larger, and in the breakout rooms you could see, let's say we take the activity scores in the breakout room. So if everyone's activity score is 0, then there's not much happening in the breakout room. But if we did like an average activity score, you could see what the breakout rooms, which ones were active, which ones weren't. Ideally, we can show you the current slide that they're working on. So if they're working on something in TL Draw, if they're animating, we bring that slide back to you so you see a thumbnail of it. As a teacher, you don't have to guess which breakout room may need your help. You can look at the data provided by BigBlueButton, see visibility in each of the breakout rooms, and decide, maybe this breakout room here has 0 activity. Let me jump into that breakout room. And we can extend this further to make it even easier for you to move students. So let's say we organize a user list where it shows, hey, we know you started breakout rooms. These 2 students at the top are not in breakout rooms. Wouldn't it be great to just drag and drop them into one of the breakout rooms? And that's all you need to do to move them. So keep it visual. And here would be an example of I've dragged Tyler in. Tyler would appear in the breakout room. Super easy to do. Okay, breakout rooms is you group people together, you're monitoring the groups, but there's a different variation of this, which we call whiteboard vision. So imagine you have 20 students in the class and you're teaching them math. And of course, the best way to learn is actually apply, right? Everything that I talked about yesterday, applied learning, and then give feedback to students. So how can you have 20 students apply themselves on something and see what they're doing and give feedback and help to the students that are struggling. Imagine you could do that through a whiteboard, and we call it whiteboard vision. So let's go take a segue from the smart slides. Let's say the slides you uploaded and BigBlueButton said, hey, there's like 3 diagrams here and you've indicated a correct answer that you want. The diagram could be like, what's the angle of the triangle or the area of the circle, or what's the proper molecule, the drawing of it. And let's say the BigBlueButton smart slides picked that up and said, you know what, the next 3 slides, there are, I can give you whiteboard vision, where I can let the students work on 3 slides. They can go back and forth between them. And I noticed you set a time in for 5 minutes. This was like some annotation you put in the slides. That's enough for us to set up a whiteboard, a collaborative session where, imagine for each student, they don't see any other students for that point of time. They can't chat with anybody else. They're kind of in their own headspace. Now they're in the BigBlueButton session. You're not putting them into breakout rooms or separately. All you're doing is narrowing their focus and giving them 3 slides to work on. They have the whiteboard tools, and you as a teacher get to sit there and just watch live updates on each of their whiteboards. And you can see checkboxes here as each of them enter in correct answers. So if you gave them 5-10 minutes to work on it, what do you want to do in those 10 minutes? You want to help the students that are struggling. And so let's show you who's struggling, by which ones maybe they got incorrect answers. We can order this so that, say, the ones that are struggling in the upper left-hand corner, maybe they haven't done any answers yet, maybe they're incorrect, maybe they haven't even moved the whiteboard around. And then what would you want to do as a teacher at that point? You'd want to connect with them one-on-one. So let's take that a step further and say, let's do a cone of silence. So imagine you could click on one of these, and then right away on the right-hand side, which is your presentation area, and the students as well, it changes. So now you're in a multi-user whiteboard with just them. The webcam's at the top reduced down to 2, you and the student. And there's a nice big X there to sort of leave cone of silence. Your audio just becomes you and the student. Private chat becomes you and the student. And now you're helping them one-on-one. This is the vision of getting the students to feel like the teacher is aware of them, cares about them, and gives them timely feedback. And imagine if you had 10 minutes of assignment, you could probably help 2 or 3 students at least. And those 2 or 3 students would get such a more rewarding experience in the online environment. And the key point here is you don't have to use an external tool to do this. We're going to build it into BigBlueButton. We're going to leverage TL Draw. We're going to leverage the analytics that we have, and we're going to make this a cohesive product so that the platform knows what you're trying to do and helps you do it without having to go to any external tool. And by building these together, we just generate lots of data. And again, that data is surfacing here as a simple way to say, hey, maybe there are 2 students that just haven't answered the question yet. Whiteboard vision, cone of silence. So what happens after you finish, let's say, that 10-minute exercise? Where does all that stuff go? Well, of course, it would go to the Learning Analytics dashboard. This is your co-pilot to help you navigate through and help you remember what has happened in the session and let you look at it in a way to, again, assess, are there any students that need help? So imagine in the whiteboard vision, you have another tab, and it says at this particular time, imagine the Learning Analytics dashboard, you have another tab, and it says, okay, at this point, you had started whiteboard vision, and it shows you the final results of all the session, all the students' work. So you don't have to like, okay, how do I get all this? Can everybody hold their piece of paper up while I take a screenshot of it? No, have it done in BigBlueButton. BigBlueButton lets you monitor it, and you can assess it as well. Okay, let's talk about assessment as well. As you get users to do like polling or chat or quiz, which is really polling with the correct answer. I didn't show an example of here, but if you just think of the polling dialog, and as you're seeing the poll results come in, you actually just tick as a teacher, correct answer, correct answer. Then when it comes time to show this in the Learning Analytics dashboard, you can kind of get like a heat map. This is really just trying to match what a teacher would may do, in their own class or their own set of students. You would write the student's name down the left, and you'd write their activities on the right, and you would grade them. Here we can make it more visual. White means there's no activity there. Gray may mean the correct answer was given, and darker would mean incorrect. So visually, you'd be able to see, is there any particular student that's really struggling, like it's all dark, or is there any question that really nobody got? And again, at a glance, can you get a sense of, is the class at a whole learning, or are there any individual students that are at whole learning or struggling to learn? All right, so let's, these are wireframes. All of these are going to go up on issues in BigBlueButton, the GitHub repository, because we want to have people comment and give feedback on it. I want to look a little bit further ahead. I think I touched on this already. If you upload slides to BigBlueButton and you lightly annotate them, and BigBlueButton detects all these concepts, these interactions, like a polling, a quiz, a breakout room, multi-user whiteboard, maybe external video to play, there's a time sequence to these. So we could actually use that as an agenda. The idea would be is, if you have a 60-minute class and BigBlueButton says, well, you've got a breakout room, you've got 4 polling questions, you've got 2 whiteboard sessions, and it says, okay, if you just average out what the time is, it can kind of run through an agenda on the left-hand side as you're going through the class to kind of help keep you on track. The next one, pretty obvious, I think, if people are looking at what we're doing in the Learning Analytics dashboard, that should actually be a recording format as well. So we'll give it to you live during the session. Through the deep integration with the LMS, we want to send that data back to the LMS so that you can get unified reports. And we'll give it to you at the end of your session as well. You'll see this now in 2.6. If you end a session, it says, hey, do you want to access the Learning Analytics dashboard? And you can download the data. But we also should make it available as a recording format. So it's just a self-contained set of slides. That you could refer back to later on, and that you could even download the data. And then the future. Okay, so this is looking even further ahead. It probably is not lost on many people that as we build things into BigBlueButton, we are making use of the coupling and of the exchange of events, but we really want to build an ecosystem where other people could extend BigBlueButton without having to modify the core product. And that would lead us to a plugin architecture. The thing that's in our mind is, like, share external video. Could that actually be a plugin? And which means it would know, the plugin would have to use an API, which we would define, that would allow it to register itself, register events. How would it be used in multi-user? How would it be used in recording? How could the instructor control it on behalf of others, or is it meant to be used, simultaneously? If we can build that out and take very simple things, then over time, people can add more interactive components to BigBlueButton, but in a way that meshes with how you would use use it in a multi-user way, and how it would be recorded and played back, and maybe even like reused later on. So that's kind of the longer term vision. And the other one is use the Matrix protocol as the foundation for chat. So Matrix is pretty impressive. It's very mature, and you're probably seeing it spread around the world. Like Rocket Chat uses as its basis for decentralized chat. And some of the learning management systems, I think, are headed towards this direction as well. If we could build Matrix, and I believe there's a presentation on the Matrix protocol, if we could build a Matrix client into BigBlueButton, and if there was discussions in the LMS that were using Matrix, and you launched into a virtual class, it would be trivial to bring those discussions into BigBlueButton, because you're just talking to the Matrix server, and you're just picking up the discussions where they left in the LMS. And then when you go back to the LMS, the discussions continue. Again, deep integration just would be awesome. And it also means that some of the things we want to do in chat, like maybe, emoji posts or upvote posts, or maybe share content in chat, we would likely just build a Matrix client in using a Matrix server on the back end, and then we would ride the wave of all the improvements that are going to Matrix and give us that interconnectivity with basically any Matrix server in the world. So lots more to do in that area. And that's the overview. So I'm happy to hang around and answer any questions. I know there's another presentation coming up, but I wanted to make the full use of this time, try to give you a much view of what was happening, some of our thoughts in terms of the roadmap, and how those thoughts are stemming from those 4 core pillars of what makes an effective virtual class: the management, relationship, engagement, and assessment. I will say that we do pretty much bi-weekly community calls now with the community. So myself Anton, others in the developer group will be there talking about kind of the more day-to-day stuff. But this is the first time that we've kind of done a higher level view of what some of these ideas around breakout vision and whiteboard vision would look like. Does any recurring scheduling, that would all be in the LMS. BigBlueButton is, you would launch from the LMS into BigBlueButton. The LMS would handle the permissions, the authentication, the visibility, the scheduling, setup of the virtual class, the calendaring. It's all done in the front end. Lita, in terms of the community calls, if you join the BigBlueButton-dev developer group, there is a link here on the BigBlueButton website, which I'll put in to community support. A lot of us hang out in the developer mailing list, and you can see us post there in terms of the biweekly calls. Adeline, the API will not be depreciated. We are going to work on a newer API, but the existing one will be living there for years. Don't worry. We're not going to break anything that's already there. Localization available for automatic closed captionings. You will be able to choose the language that you are speaking in. If you look at the demo that Google provides, you can choose a variety of languages. We're not going to try to do automatic speech or translation from one language to another. Might actually be possible with the publicly available APIs, but right now each user would just choose a language if they enable the closed captioning using the web speech API, and then it would just parse in whatever language you're doing. Zaid, the calendar integration front end. You could look at maybe doing someone could do someday a plugin for Google Calendar or others, but think of it from the educational point of view. We live in the LMS, and we're looking for really deep integration with the LMS. Okay, so I would encourage you all to go to the next presentation. That's going to be on Greenlight, of which the team is doing a lot of work for you to rewrite Greenlight from scratch. So it's going to be in Rails 7, super awesome. Lucas, the next release will probably be on Ubuntu 20. We're still looking to get away from the last bits of Corrento, which are kind of tying us down Ubuntu 20. So when we get rid of that, when we get away from it, lots of good stuff going on in Media Soup, we will get ourselves on the 2204. So 20 is pretty good. We're pretty happy about being on 20 right now, but we will be improving the architecture and getting to a future. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.